The Founding Fathers were bold and imaginative rebels with a cause. 250 years ago, or as we say in the United Kingdom, just the other day,
Relatively speaking, King Charles was right when he addressed Congress. 250 years isn't that long in the history of the world, but America got a whole lot done in that time. Joining us with some key moments that shaped our nation as well as the world is historian Mr. McKinney, founder of Houston History Bus. All right, good morning, Mr. McKinney, and you're kind of like a conglomeration of a patriot here. All right, watching that address from King Charles, he also said, if Dickens would put a title to our story, it would be A Tale of Two Georges. Right? George Washington, of course, King George.
Absolutely, you know, and a lot of it is going back to the very beginning. Let's talk about that from when it first started out. So you have people that populate this area, and really the birth of the independence movement starts with a lot of the colonists that are upset about a couple things. So first and foremost, they want to move out west. Mm-hmm. They want to go past the Appalachian Mountains.
Way west, yeah.
Way west, and that was very much so way west. And they've already pushed the Native Americans further and further out. So there was kind of this little rule with the British government, okay, we're not going to go into that area, the Ohio River Valley, or that fertile land. They wanted to colonize and take over, and that started to cause problems.
Yeah, because they saw the British government favoring the Native alliances.
Yeah, and also the French own that land too. So we understood that we're going to stay to the east of the Appalachian Mountains. That's where we're going to be, and it didn't end up working out that way. And so a war takes place. Okay, you've got the French-Indian War that takes place, and this war ends up costing a lot of money. Yeah. It's a 7 years war that happens both here and both in Europe.
And so when things cost a lot of money, here come more taxes, right?
Someone's got to pay for it.
Yeah.
And the colonists were like, well, we shouldn't have to pay for this. This is your responsibility to protect us and to do all this. And plus, we have nobody in Parliament anyway to represent us.
Yeah.
So why should we pay all this debt?
No taxation without representation.
That's where it all started.
Right?
So
yeah.
they end up having a series of taxes, okay? So we've heard about some of these taxes. The Townsend Act is the first one that really goes into place in a large way. But then you have the Stamp Act. You have, of course, the Tea Act.
Yeah.
And that causes, of course, the Boston Tea Party, where they're throwing all this tea in the river, and they're dressing up the sons of Native Americans to kind of mask themselves in this. And there's lots of tea parties that take place all throughout the country. It's not just in one city.
Yeah, and then what happens, of course, when you have protests, you're like, hear me, and if you don't hear me, things escalate from protest to war.
100%. So you have a series of battles that start to take place all throughout when the British troops are coming into America. And it actually is kind of a civil war. You have a difference between two different groups. You've got the colonists and you have the loyalists.
Yeah.
Loyalists these are Britons. They were born in British. They came to this country to colonize it, and all of a sudden here they are expecting to support the king. And the colonists are saying, well, we're going to do this. So you have this internal fighting that's taking place in addition to what's happening with the British government.
Yeah, okay, and then it's full-on war, and when you look back at it, it's crazy that the United States won. It was like kind of a bunch of rebel rousers, people came off the farm and the whole bit. You had some trained soldiers as well, but took on the greatest army and navy in the world.
Absolutely. England was on fire. They were doing so many amazing battles and getting a lot of traction, but what really helped us was the French getting involved. We also had some Indian alliances, Native American alliances within the area as well.
And the fighting style.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. 100%. So when all of a sudden you have the French join us in this battle, we start to win. So we've always had that connection with France, right? That debt of gratitude, if you will.
Yeah, all right. Then becoming the United States didn't happen overnight.
It sure didn't. So again, lots of other battles that took place. We finally, in 1775, we start to meet as a Congress. We elect George Washington as the commander-in-chief of this of the Continental Congress as well, and the commander-in-chief of the Army. And then we claim our independence on July 2nd, July 4th. Here we are signing this document saying that we are going to be independent. And there's several battles that take place between then and now, and America becomes free as far as 1783.
Yeah, and then there are several things that happen that shape our country and also impact the world. One of them starts with, I asked that supreme law of the land, the Constitution. They had to have a foundation to rest upon.
Absolutely. So everyone gets together, they sign the Constitution. We also sign the Treaty of Paris, which makes everything official. So after we establish the Treaty of Paris, we establish our Constitution, we sign the Constitution.
Recognizes as a country.
100%. And then all of a sudden, here we are able to be on our own.
Yeah, all right. So the signing of the Constitution, and then the Louisiana Purchase, because now we're expanding.
So you look at this, it over doubles the size of America in 1803. So we now have a city, and this happens because Napoleon's got his war going on in France and Europe, and he all of a sudden needs more money. And he doesn't need this land. He talks about maybe one day expanding over to this continent, but he decides, you know what, I'm going to focus on Europe. He does that, and then he sells the land to us, doubles the country, and then it kind of starts this spree where all of a sudden Texas in 1845 happens, 1848 California, and eventually America goes from sea to shining sea.
Yeah, all right. Fast forward, 1896, the birth of, at that time, modern media.
You know, so yeah, 1896, you've got Thomas Edison. Look, we talked about some milestones, right? What are some important American milestones? Of course, you know, the railroad coming to, you know, here in the 1820s or so, but you have things that are unique to America, and Thomas Edison perfects a couple things. Beyond the light bulb and invents other things as well, the motion picture camera really does change media. It changes how people aspect, and it really creates Hollywood, because all of a sudden people are going to Hollywood off the West Coast to escape his litigious...
And it was the way that people got the news of the day, even though it may have happened a few days ago, right,
yes.
by the time they got it.
You know, you've got radio too, you've got Alexander Graham Bell with the telephone. So these are important American inventions and milestones that take place throughout our country. And then we look at that, and we look at people as inventors also. Henry Ford with the Model T Ford in 1908.
And the Model T, the car that was affordable. Like you said, you can get any color you want as long as it's in black, right? Because before, cars had been highly custom made, and
sure.
only people with a lot of money could afford them. This made it much more affordable, the Industrial Revolution, if you will.
And we didn't invent the car, obviously.
Yeah.
That came from Europe, but it's the idea that we perfected the assembly line process. We got Henry Ford to really kind of create this weekend aspect where he's paying his employees a wonderful wage to where they're able to afford his cars, afford to travel. So he kind of creates an American culture that we have so much today.
Yeah.
And we also kind of start shifting away from mass transit too, a little bit later on, about 20 years after that too. So unlike Europe that has great mass transit.
America was kind of an isolationist country for a long time. And then we had World War I, we stepped in and stepped out. But then World War II kind of solidified our modern day position in the world.
100%. Here we are having to realize that we need to be kind of that adult in the room, the big brother, right? So here we are, somebody who's active in making sure that we are creating democracy all across the world, and we do that in a great way by winning World War II, also being active in World War I and helping to solidify that as well. But the manufacturing, the petrochemical industry here in Houston specifically, we benefit greatly from that, and that really helps to grow our economy and also grows our housing, and then our census numbers double digit as well. So those are important milestones that specific to Houston, but also all over.
Yeah, okay. At the same time that we were trying to bring a sense of peace and balance to the world, we were having problems here at home still, left over from the slavery and the civil rights movement peaks up again. It's been a civil rights movement for many, many years, but it really came to a head, I think, during the 1960s. 1964, the Civil Rights Act that solidified and said, we can no longer do this.
It was pivotal. It was something that JFK always talked about doing, obviously, and then LBJ decides we've got to make this happen. So 1964, the Civil Rights Act is signed. That allows for a really strong equality and the end of legal segregation and discrimination. So it sweeps and makes equality something attainable for so many people.
Yeah, all right. Fast forward a lot. We talked about technology, the modern media back during Edison's day, but now the smartphone era.
You know, it's going to be 20 years old coming up. 2007, the smartphone, Apple's iPhone launches, and it just changes the world, changes everybody. You look at the viewers, look at the audience, right? I mean, it's people that are watching sometimes and learning out there. These individuals some of them only grew up with a smartphone.
And you're not waiting for news of the day. It's in your hand the second it happens.
Yeah, if you got the KHU app, right?
Yeah, right. If you have that KHU app, there you go. All right. And then another invention that changed so much. We talk about, the car changed a lot, the automobile, but another invention that changed a lot, especially for Houston, is this thing called the air conditioner. There would be no Houston without the air conditioner.
You know, you're right. I mean, it's one of those things we think about that. I mean, it'd be a very different Houston. We wouldn't be the large city we are today, right? Other cities in the north might take some of our thunder, but really, air conditioning is what allowed Houston to grow the way that it grew in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and so forth. So we had that. And in 1902, Willis Carrier invents air conditioning. It's really meant for a plant in Brooklyn. The machine you see on your screen right now is a perfect example. It's a massive piece of hunk of machinery to be able to cool down an entire warehouse so that the ink would not separate. And that's just an example. And then we applied it to everything, including the eighth wonder of the world. You look at Astrodome, 1965.
Can you imagine that, Bill?
Yeah, really. You've got the world's largest air-conditioned room at the time, and that's one of those American milestones that is unique to Houston.
A lot of businesses would say, like, hey, we were air-conditioned. So people will go to those businesses because they could actually cool off in the summer months,
We talked about Edison earlier, right? When it comes to the movie theaters, the motion picture, that was a form of marketing. They were able to say, we've got chilled air inside, and you would pay a nickel to get out of the heat.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap up with, you have made this your livelihood, and you think it's so important. You've always loved history. Why is it important for us to stop, take a minute, and learn something about your own own backyard, or if not the rest of the world?
You know, history definitely repeats itself, and it's important, especially now more than ever, to look at that. We're at 250 years. What a great milestone. I mean, it's probably our toddler years as the king, looks at it, because in the scope of Europe, it's a tiny fraction. But for us, we've accomplished so much as a country, as a people, as we've come together. I think that's worth celebrating. And and there are differences that we have, but that's human nature. So we will find a common ground. We always have. Yeah. And that's the most important thing.
Look, we usually go to England around July 4th, and we say, we won, we're going to stay home this year. But anyway, I actually had breakfast with King Charles several years ago, and it was funny because I go, so what do you think of Texas? And he goes, well, I like it, but one thing was kind of disappointing. I said, what? He really thought, he goes, I thought I'd see more cowboys. So I'm like, go to Houston during rodeo, you'll get your fill.
February,
right? Yeah,
End
it was
of February,
funny.
You'll see
He was halfway joking, but yeah, it was funny. But anyway, thank you, Mr. McKinney, for keeping us all in the loop. To connect with Mr. McKinney or for more information about the Houston History Bus, visit greatdayhouston.com. He does these great tours all around town, and so the history can be as wide as you want it, but literally it can be your own backyard. You'll be driving down the street and go, that building right there, have you ever wondered, right? The name of that street, have you ever wondered?